When should you have a character specialize in something? Now, I believe I touched on this briefly in my powering up characters video, but I think this specialization topic can use a deep dive, or at least a bit of a deeper dive, especially since it can also relate to how we operate in real life as well. Anyway, I will actually first start this by almost refuting the specialization topic as a whole because of the jack of all trades. Now, I really like this phrase because it has a bit more depth than most people realize. Because most of us know jack of all trades, master of none. But it has actually a third line. Often better than a master of one. And that's the thing, is that when you have these general everyday situations, or a variety of situations, you want to have someone who's decent at most of them. They may not be the best at it, but they can at least handle themselves in those situations. But again, there are some situations where you want to have the master of their craft working, and it's always good to have that. But we don't actually have those situations every day, so it's having those skill sets and from a variety of things that can really come in handy. And the thing is that when someone is operating solo, that can actually be a benefit, whether it be like a person just starting their business, so they're having to handle everything themselves, so they need to actually learn all the skill sets. They may have one thing they're really good at, but they also need the other skill sets to keep supporting the business since they're operating solo. The same can be said for a character who's like the main star or the action hero, who's going to be doing a variety of different things. So they may have this specialization. They may be the best in the world at one thing, but they also have these other skill sets, so they are still good wherever they find themselves in. So the audience isn't bored because they're having to see the same thing over and over again. The other thing to really think of a jack of all trades is in the main character, whereas you may have a thing where you can't drop the main character, but you have all these other characters who are specializing in something. So the main character serves as kind of this baseline where you can cover for whatever weaknesses or whatever strengths you put in with the other character slots. Or maybe they just want you to have the pleasure of using the main character, so they don't really have him specialize in anything, so almost anyone can use him. Stuff like that. And the other thing is that the jack of all trades avoids being too niche. They're useful in that variety of situations. They aren't that master one who is only good in this certain situation. Which can be kind of leading into our next topic in that core group of characters where you have each person having this defined job or role to fulfill. And so we can think of it in like a forensic show where you have someone doing the autopsy, you have someone dusting for fingerprints, you have someone actually doing the legwork and running down the suspect. And the thing to think of that is that everyone has their role to play. They all have this kind of spot on the team. They all did their time in the spotlight for each episode. And basically, there's not a worry that, hey, these two characters overlap a bit. They each have their point to play. And we can also think of that with like party in a video game, where you might have the damage dealer, then you have the tank, then you have the healer, and so on and so forth. You have all these different characters and their roles to play in a story or a game, so that they're each doing their time in the spotlight, they each have their use, and there's no question of what they're supposed to be doing. But let's say you want a bigger task than that. Then you might have to niche down, add in a few specializations of certain characters where they're useful in certain situations. Or maybe you add in some overlap where two people do have the same skill set, or at least a similar skill set. And then I talked about elemental systems in that powering up video, where a character can have like a specific element, but then you can also have another character who has a similar job description, but they're in a different element, so they apply to different set of content. So you have ways like that to have overlap or a niche for each character to fulfill the role. Now the thing is that there's another way to do this, in that when you have that overlap, in that a character can't be everywhere at once. So let's say you have a crisis on one side of the planet, so you have to send in a team there, but you also have another Trisus on this side of the planet, and they may actually have similar requirements, but you have two people who actually have the same skill set. So you can send them both to one or the other. I mean, you can send one to each of the Trisus that are going on. Another way to think of this is that in games, you might have a thing where, okay, you use these characters on this level, okay, they're not locked to that level, so now you have to use the rest of the roster to go on to the next one. And that's kind of one kind of game mechanic wise that you can do that to kind of have the benefits of overlapping characters without necessarily completely disregarding them. But the other side of that niching or overlap is that the niche needs a job, the overlap needs a job. They can't just sit there providing color commentary. They need to have this role to play. You don't want to have someone whose specialization only comes in like once a season. Unless, of course, they're a Death Star, then they can basically be that once a season Death Star. But the thing is, if you want to have them be a part of the main cast, you want to have them have a role. Or if you want to make this new character in a game kind of have a bit of spotlight on it, you don't want to make it so that their role or their niche is only in very specific areas that you may not actually have any in-game content for. Or maybe the characters you already have do just fine in the content you designed for it. So the thing is to really think about what is this character's niche to play and so forth. And the other thing is to think of is the audience for this character too niche? Or at least niche in our audience that we have this tour of. Because then I always say you should respect the tour audience that you have, rather than trying to say, oh, I want people from this audience, but I'd have to sacrifice how I appeal to my main audience to do that. And we kind of see some of that when there's kind of like executives wanting to appeal to this target demographic. So it's like add in a different character that appeals to them. And it's like the character doesn't actually jive with the rest of the cast or the story as a whole, but it's like the executives wanted it. So it's just kind of this weird thing where it's like, why did you add this character in? And the thing to really think about is that generic appeal can be good. If a character appeals to a wide variety of people, that's great. That means they have that general appeal, that generic appeal. That's fine. They don't have to all be this niche fan base and so forth. I mean, you can have those, but you also want to have most of your main cast to be generally appealable or applicable in most situations, or however you want to say it. Anyway, let's now get into kind of like the real life examples. This was mostly in story talk or games, I guess, but the thing to really think about is what is the unique selling point? And again, we can talk about characters in that way, but let's think about doing like a worked out program. What would be the unique selling point of the worked out program? Because there are so many worked out programs a day, like you can't basically scroll through social media without finding one, I think, sometimes. But the thing is, the more of something there is, the less unique it is, the less it stands out that you're doing something about it. So, would your worked out program be based on location? Would it be based on this target audience and dealing with their struggles particularly? Would it be the methods you use? Would it be because it's you, it's your story and how you've operated? And so all those different things can work to be the unique selling point of that weight loss program. And the other thing we can think of is with jobs. What is the unique selling point of you as a prospective hire or a prospective promotion? And the thing to think of is that the easier something is to train, the less leverage someone has to use. Because it's basically like a neurosurgeon or a cardiac surgeon has this specialized skill set that takes years to develop. And so they have that leverage to basically say, hey, this is my skill set, this is what I'm useful for, and if I'm the best in my field at it, then I'm generally going to have that leverage. Or maybe I have a variety of skill set, but I have the specialization that I'm offering, so I can do the general stuff, but I can also do the specialization. So those kinds of things may be more appealable and have more leverage in sticking around than basically a job as a greeter or at the cash register where you can basically pull in someone off the street, basically have that help wanted sign in the window and say, hey, you want a job? It will take me about 2 hours to train someone. So it's like when someone who has an easy to train for job is causing the company problems, what point would they basically say, hey, I can basically replace you in about 2 hours? Again, you want to have a leverage to be able to say, hey, you can't really replace me. So you want to make yourself valuable, and probably valuable at least to a point. I mean, there's some go back and forth on that, but then sometimes there's some things where people are doing so far above their pay grade that the company can't keep them. But that seems, I almost want to say that doesn't really seem as common as it is on TV for a problem to have. But again, it's something to think about. But anyway, these are kind of my thoughts on why both specialization and jack of all trades are good things to have for characters and in real life. So maybe you have a different perspective I haven't considered, or maybe you just want to share some thoughts. So why not do that in the comments below? And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so that others may see it as well. And if you want to see more content like this, you can also subscribe so you can see videos as they are uploaded. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lions Mane Media, where we celebrate stories and the lessons you learn from them. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.